right, good evening, afternoon, morning. I have had agita tonight. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Jewish holiday of Purim. Okay. We'll go through the practical before the metaphysical. Jewish holiday of Purim, right? When it falls out on, well, the day it falls out is even confusing. Okay, it really is, right? You can celebrate Purim on the, I think, 13th, 14th, and 15th of the month of Adar. I think maybe even 12th. That was there's a whole tractate of Jewish law about this holiday, and the whole bit at the beginning about how many days you can celebrate it. So yeah, look, this is a weird ass holiday, man. A weird ass holiday. But the upshot is this, right? The day before the holiday, you have a fast, the fast of Esther. I'll explain what that is in a minute. And then the first thing you do is you hear this scroll called the Megillah. Have you ever heard? Oh, it's a whole Megillah. That expression, that Jewish expression, that's where it comes from. The Megillah. We read the story of Purim, right? And it's quite entertaining. And then it's also somewhat interactive. People dress up. People do shtick. I tell you. It's really painful when really not funny people make jokes. It's like, oh, so much cringe, right? Because, okay, essentially, I would say the people who were good at fun, right, are basically my synagogue fun and enjoyable don't have so much to do with it anymore. Me being a principal one, frankly. And I was quite famished tonight because I had to temporarily assume the role of a Gabbai, which I was not happy about at all, right? At all. I was miffed about it to start with. I'll tell you about that in a second. So yeah, so then you read the script, and then kids go off to parties, that sort of thing. And the next day, you when you go to synagogue in the morning, they read the scroll again, and then you we make up these little packets of food. It's nicer than it sounds. They normally have a theme, we try and put things together. We do particularly cool ones because if you hadn't noticed yet, baby, we're particularly cool. Do you have any pictures of the ones we've done? We did like a great cowboy one. They put it in a cowboy hat and there's like edible rope in it and all this like cowboy stuff, right? And we always do there's a little Grace After Meals prayer fold out thing you can get, which I always make my own one for this holiday. So people collect them, right? The people who get the good ones, they collect them. It's like, what are you doing this year? I haven't done Flintstones yet. I would like to do Flintstones. Anyway, so this year, it's I give you a normal year. Normal year, then you have to go out in the car, and you slap these little things to everybody, and the streets are packed. People are wearing costumes. It's just like it's a nightmare, right? It's a nightmare. But we get through it, right? We get through it, Dunkirk spirit and all that, right? And then we go home, and then you twiddle about a little bit. Maybe have a l'chaim or two. L'chaim, right? Then after the afternoon prayer, you go to a festive meal where you get shit-faced, right? I tell you, I know who I'm going to stop by because I bet there's going to be a lot of weed at that one. It's like the one right next to me. I am so stopping there. Hi. I just thought I'll stop by. Although this year I'm drinking wine. Normally I do tequila, right? Normally I do tequila, salt and lemon. My stomach's a bit delicate. I like wine, right? I'm an old fart now. So we have a local winery. I got a nice bottle of, I got a few like Merlots and Pinot Noir. and this nice, like, sweetish wine, delicate sweet wine. It's not like heavy sweet wine, which I will start off with, right? And that might well do the trick. I'm not a huge drinker, right? Genuinely not. Anyway, but this year, it's all for Mish, right? It's all for Mish this year, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, it's all for Mish. It's all for Mish, and I'm for Klimt, okay? I'm for Klimt. That's for Mish. Oy vey, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, for Mish for Klimt, right? Purim night, because it's on Saturday night, right? Therefore, the fast is pushed off till Thursday, right? That was what I did on Thursday. Now, Saturday night, you can't start it till Sabbath is out. Sabbath is out at 6:30, right? So I assume 6:30 they would do the evening prayer, Mariv, right? Avit, as the Israelis say. And straight after that, you read the Megillah. You want to read the Megillah? We got the Megillah. Like, you read the Megillah, right? You read the Megillah, and that takes guessing the length of a Megillah reading is tough, right? Because it's somewhat interactive. Because every time you say the name of the bad guy, Haman, you go, bah! And oftentimes everybody brings their kids to the synagogue, and we try. I go to the grumpy old man group, right? And I always hope that's going to be quicker because we're grumpy old men. But we also got grandkids, so that's where grumpy old men come across the rocky shores. But yeah, so you never know how long it's going to take. Like a reading of it could be anything. I look, fastest somebody said is 16 minutes. I've never heard of that. I think I think 35 is an average, right? We were like 42. I was like, oh God. So here's the thing. I thought that's what we're doing. It's starting at 6:30. By 6:15, we'll start Megillah. By by 7:30 max, I'll be home. Maximum. Right? No, ladies and gentlemen, that was not to be, right? That was not to be. Because unbeknownst to me, they changed the start time till 7 o'clock. What? I'm back. Beyond me. The entire rest of my family got there, even though they had an extra half hour, they got there late. And so they went to the next beginning. I'm like, and so they were even late. I'm like, and I need like 5 minutes to come down, right, before getting online. Man, so I've had agita this evening. Much agita, but I'm here for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here for you. Tonight is Purim night, ladies and gentlemen. Purim is a funky holiday, right? And I realized while I was listening to the Megillah being read, very well, if I may say so. But a very nice gentleman. I like the guy who reads it. He's a real, I say Baal Midot. Midot is good characteristics of Baal's master of, right? He's he's a nice bloke, right? Essentially, right? I like him. He's a very decent bloke. I like him a lot. Like, he was one of the first people to bring COVID into the synagogue, and because he's so nice, people gave him a pass. Because he's that decent a bloke, right? He's like such a decent bloke. I really like him. Anyway, I digress. So while we're talking about him reading the Megillah, he did quite a good job. Because I like him. Anyway, what was I up to? Fine. So yeah. So for these reasons, I'm like, I haven't seen the trailer yet. I'm going to be watching the trailer live. You're going to get my live reaction, right? We're going to be looking at the news. The news seems a bit funky, right? The news seems a bit funky to me from what I'm hearing. Like, all right, we should talk about what Purim is theologically. We'll have a practical ramification. Let's wait and see. Have you ever seen A Very Peculiar Practice, right? Which is a very good early 80s weird rom-com. I don't know, how would you describe it? It's like a romantic drama about this kind of like a lost, adrift at life doctor working in a university, and he's very earnest. He's played by Peter Davison, and it's about him like he's free falling through life essentially. But it's a really interesting little study on what universities. What's his name's in it? Ian Cuthbertson's fantastic. Ian Cuthbertson's fantastic in everything. They got was it David Troughton? It's one Troughton kid, and it was also very good. And what's her name? Who they finally roped into the Jodie years. What was her name again? Great actress. But playing a very sexy lesbian. Quite successfully, actually, I might say so. So a very sexually powerful lesbian, right? Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair description. Anyway, so at the end of it, everything seems to have imploded at the end of the first season. His entire life seems to completely implode, and nothing he wants happens. And then one thing happens, and they were talking all the way through it about chaos theory, about how you get to one part in the math and suddenly flip, everything goes inside out, right? And that's what happens at the end of this episode, the end of that season. It was very like it was a strong ending. It's a great show. You should really check it out. It's got a great theme tune. It was a hit, was it Bonnie Tyler? It feels like it was Bonnie Tyler, right? But it's good. So that is the Holiday of Purim. You know, in essence, it's a weird story, right? Which really highlights how little we understand temporarily foreign cultures. Like we have no conception of life in 800 AD Persia, right? We've like it's so bizarre, right? Because it's a weird story. It's a weird, horrible story, right? It's essentially of like sacrifice and sacrifice for the love of God and the love of Jewish people, I would say, right? It's about it's set in the times of the first exile the second exile. We're in the third exile now, right? The second exile, the Persian exile, the Babylonian exile, I should say. Ahasuerus was the king, who was basically Donald Trump, right? Basically, Donald Trump, who was a character in Game of Thrones, so he's like shagging and killing people too, right? That kind of Donald Trump, right? And that really is very braggadocious. Imagine Donald Trump in Game of Thrones. That's who Ahasuerus was, right? That's a perfect analogy. Man, that is a perfect analogy. I'm quite impressed with myself. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just stuck with Donald Trump and Game of Thrones. That's really that's such a brilliant idea. I don't know. Like again, I thank God AI isn't too functional yet, because that would be a movie. I hear they're doing another spin-off about Aragon, I think. I don't know. I can't remember. About the first of the Dragon Lords, right? Anyway, so essentially there's this big celebration because throughout the entire Persia, this lavish celebration where they feel the exile for the Jews is never going to end, and they are the supreme rulers of the universe, right? They're very Ahasuerus is very happy with himself, and so he throws a huge lavish banquet for like everyone, and he does for the Jews, he gives them like the bestest kosherish food. I told you, he's like Donald Trump. I would be the bestest kosher food ever. People, I'm not bragging, but people said they would rather eat their own head rather than not eat some of my kosher food. It is that kosher. It'll be on gold plates. It will be like the kosherest, most opulent thing ever, right? And he would in this way he would display vessels of the Jewish temple, which was ransacked by him, to show his primacy over the Jewish empire, right? How he had them under control, and most Jews went for it. Here's the thing: it was like me, my local synagogue. Most Jews went for it. They're like, well, so it's a free meal, it's kosher. Why make waves, right? One guy didn't, called Mordecai, right? He called bullshit, and they were not happy with him for that. Let's put it that way. He did not go down well. This is why I relate to him quite well. Anyway, so it turns out, as a direct result of theologically, this guy called Haman was unleashed, who was the king of this spiritual king, I should say, of the nation of Amalek. Amalek are like the evil anti-Jew, right? Nazis are Amalek, right? So this guy was called Haman. I think he was the same soul as Hitler, right? But he rose to power, and he got the king bribing him, I believe, Ahasuerus, to give him the okay to slaughter the Jews on I think the 15th. Or was it 12th? No, the 11th of Adar, because it was Moses's day of his death, but it was also the day of his birth, right? So, and then there's a parallel story that goes on how Ahasuerus is looking for a new queen because his old queen Vashti wouldn't dance seductively. They say politely in front of his party guests. So she got exiled. She was actually the last. Ahasuerus was a revolutionary. He came in. He took over from the ruling family. I think Nebuchadnezzar. And this was the final daughter of the Vashti was the final daughter of the royal family that he overcame. So now he's looking for a new wife, and this girl Esther gets put in the frame. Esther is now here's where it gets weird. The adopted daughter, prospective wife, both, right? It's really bizarre because they're not like, yeah, this is a bit weird. No, it's they're like, yeah, no, it's a very, very, very culturally different thing, because there's when they said that John Barrowman got his dick out a lot on set, and it was like, yeah, what's the problem? Same thing with this, right? So there's a Rebbetzin that's a female rabbi, essentially. She would hate that description, but really incredibly learned woman, Sapora Heller, who I heard speak on this in depth, right? And she really speaks about her feminine, desire for Esther's desire for Mordecai on a spiritual level, right? Which I look, for me, it just seems a stretch, because I have trouble conceiving of anybody really being on the level, right? I really do. But I would take this woman's word for it, right? But anyway, so she ends up having to marry Ahasuerus instead, right? I actually think that was it Ivana Trump, his daughter, right? The gorgeous one. I think Ivana Trump is the same soul as Queen Esther. I'll tell you why. Because she was described in several ways as being the most fairest of the land. She was a very, very beautiful woman. Now, again, in ancient Persia, that means something very different. It meant her burqa was a bit hot. I mean, from what I could gather, right? It's really weird how different things were. But yeah. So she ended up having to marry Ahasuerus, and Mordecai told her, look, there's a plan to wipe out the Jews. You might survive it, but if you believe in God, right? If you think God's real, then you've got to do something, right? I mean, it's like, otherwise you're not. Look, Jews are going to come to redemption sometime or another. You're going to decide if you're going to be part of the Jews or not, right? And so she basically saves the day in a brilliant display of psychology, as she pumps up the paranoia and the ego of Ahasuerus, and then says that Haman's the bad guy, right? Essentially, right? And it also pumps up the aspirations of Haman, right? She really, it's very, very clever, the whole story. Anyway, so and then the Jews are allowed to given arms or something to defend themselves. It's a very weird story, right? But anyway, the Jews come out on top in the end. The gallows they made for that Haman, the bad guy, the Hitler guy, made for Mordecai, the good guy. Him and his 10 sons end up hanging on those gallows, right? So there's a fascinating bit in that which refers to the Nuremberg trials. It always blows my freaking mind. It reminds me of something that happened in the real world. I only found out about it on Sabbath, but during the very recently, during the Nuremberg trials, the result of it was delayed. So it was after the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. So it was in September, October, around there, right? So they all go kind of quietly, apart from the last guy, Julius Streicher, who was dragged, kicking and screaming, crying and shitting himself in terror to the gallows. It's like doesn't really bother me at all, strange enough. Anyway, he was his last words were, "Today is Purim, the Purim festival." Right, before he's knocked off the gallows, right? Or knocked off the chair. But Purim is at this time of year in April. So what's it in March? I say, what's he talking about? That the section where they talk about the 10 sons. There's 3 little letters in it, right? And the tradition is you have to write them in small and in one big letter, one written super big. And so if you take those letters, they arrange the century and the year that the Nuremberg trials were finished, right? The judgment day, which again was delayed for calls of clemency, right? So they were delayed to go for that year, and nobody knew why those letters were put there, because there's a really strange part in it in the text. It's after they hung the 10 sons, Haman and 10 sons, the king talks to Esther and says, "Whatever it is you want, you can have. I'll give you literally anything." And the tradition is they're saying that God is talking to Esther, because she is like, "You're gone above and beyond. She's done a good job. Let's say that she's done an awfully good job." So she says, "I want the 10 people who are hung today to be taken out again tomorrow and hung in the future." A bit of a weird, like she wants the 10 corpses rehung. Seems a bit strange, right? Seems a bit strange. Doesn't really make sense. However, if you then say she's talking about not then, but an adjoining moment in space and time, which would be, was it 1946, I guess? The Nuremberg trials, 1947, right? Sometime around there. I think that's what it was alluding to, right? I think that's exactly, because they had 10 sons of Haman and 1 daughter. The daughter killed herself because she mistakenly emptied a chamber pot of water over her father's head, thinking it to be Mordecai, right? And then one of the 11 on trial, what's his name? Goebbels, right, was trans, right? Oh, yeah, you say was a transvestite. No, let's say honestly, was trans, right? One of the 11 Nazis on trial was trans. So I don't think being trans was such a social taboo, really, in Nazi Germany. Anyway, weird that, innit? I don't think too heavily about it. Anyway, and he killed himself by there was cyanide that was hidden in his toilet, right? So yeah, there's these weird parallels. So I do think Queen Esther is Ivana Trump, right? Because Esther was somebody who was Jewish, who was pulled out of being Jewish, right, and into being not Jewish, and very famously beautiful, right, and intelligent, and all these things. And I think Ivana Trump is somebody who wasn't Jewish, who converted to be Jewish, right? They both share this flux quasi-Jew, not Jew state, right? And they're both very famously beautiful. So I think that's a weird connection, right? I think that is a weird and strange connection. But yeah, we live in weird and strange times, baby. Oh yeah. So what's the weird connection? I think again, I haven't even seen the news yet, but as I understand it, that the US wanted to impose a ceasefire on Israel. I'm like, fuck you, really, via the UN, and apparently it was blocked by Russia and China for because it's not mean enough to Israel. But it's interesting. But according to my kids, I think they have more knowledge than I do. That the problem they have right now in Gaza is there's nobody in charge. They've just decimated everybody. Right? There's no communication network. They are just decimated, which makes it hard to get the hostages back. Right? Because there's nobody in charge. There's literally nobody in charge. It's kind of like that bit in Apocalypse Now, where they reach like the end of the Danang River or something. They're like, this is the furthest American point, right? And it's just crazy. It's like so insanely fucked up, right? And Charlie Sheen's like, where's your CEO? And the guy's like, I thought that was you. That's really bad news, if that happens to be the case, right?
My name's Tzvi Lebetkin, the Rabbi from another planet. Please like, share, and subscribe, and ring that little bell. Ring the little bell so you're notified when new videos drop.